Hi, welcome back to Fresh Faces New Ideas. My name is David. If you like this channel or you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the things that I do, and you can follow me there. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. So for this video, we're going to cover Tim Scott's response to Joe Biden's joint session. Now, it's very disingenuous. There's a lot of things he says, and you're going to watch, and I'm going to point out that the things he says, he's just using generalizations. When Joe Biden was talking, and he was talking about, oh, this plan is going to create X million jobs doing X, Y, and Z, you're going to hear Tim Scott not do that. Okay? And obviously, yes, he's not, having a conversation with somebody, he's talking back, but he's responding to something. So he's just so it's just very disingenuous what he's saying. So let's go watch his response.
Good evening. I'm Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina. We just heard President Biden's first address to Congress. Our president seems like a good man. His speech was full of good words, but President Biden promised you a specific kind of leadership. He promised to unite a nation, to lower the temperature, to govern for all Americans, no matter.
Now, keep in mind, when Republicans say this argument that Joe Biden is not being unifying, the difference between Joe Biden reaching out and getting you on board and you absolutely flat out refusing to get on board, but the American people supporting what he does, are totally separate things. To be clear, 70% of Americans supported the American Rescue Plan. There were some Republican amendments in the bill, and they all voted no. You don't get to claim unity when your whole political strategy is no. Nope. I'm going to take my ball and go to the corner. Nope. That's not how unity works. So this is a disingenuous talking point right off the bat.
No matter how we voted. This was the pitch. You just heard it again. But our nation is starving for more than empty platitudes. We need policies and progress that brings us closer together. But 3 months in, the actions of the president and his party are pulling us further and further apart.
So far, Joe Biden has increased vaccinations, given money to people, expanded healthcare, expanded people not having to pay for their rent, and has proposed a massive infrastructure bill, massive jobs bill, and taxing the wealthy. So what are you saying is pulling you apart? What exactly about that pulls you apart, Tim Scott? Are you going to actually say it? No.
I won't waste your time with finger pointing or partisan bickering. You can get that on TV anytime you want. I want to have an honest conversation.
Good. Let's be honest. I hope you actually follow that up.
Common sense and common ground. About this feeling that our nation is sliding off its shared foundation and how we move forward together. Growing up, I never dreamed I would be standing here tonight. When I was a kid, my parents divorced. My mother, my brother, and I moved in with my grandparents. 3 of us sharing one bedroom. I was disillusioned and angry, and I nearly failed out of school. But I was blessed. First, with a praying mama. And let me say this to the single mothers out there who are working their tails off, working hard, trying to make the ends meet, wondering if it's worth it, you can bet it is.
Except I'm not going to help you make ends meet by raising the minimum wage.
God bless your amazing effort.
I'm also not going to help you by giving you child tax credit that Joe Biden wants to make permanent.
On part of your kids. I was also blessed by a Chick-fil-A operator, John Moniz, and finally with a string of opportunities that are only possible here in America. This past year, I've watched COVID attack every rung of the ladder that helped me up. So many families have lost parents and grandparents too early. So many small businesses have gone under. Becoming a Christian transformed my life, but for months, too many churches were shut down.
Why? Why were they shut down, Tim? Because the government, the Trump government, was just like, the churches? Or was it because they were super spreader events and that in order to deal with the pandemic that you generally ignored, we had to close certain things? because temples and mosques were closed as well.
I'm saddened that millions of kids have lost a year of learning when they could not afford to lose a single day.
But why? Why, Tim? These are good platitudes. You just said that Joe Biden was giving you platitudes. You're giving us platitudes. The reason these things are happening are because of what? Just in a vacuum? Are they Joe Biden's fault? Are you claiming that they happened in the last 3 months?
Locking vulnerable kids out of the classroom is locking adults out of their future. Our public schools should have reopened months ago. Other countries did.
Other countries did a better job of handling the pandemic.
Religious schools did. Science has shown for months that schools are safe. But too often, powerful grown-ups set science aside, and kids like me were left behind.
Yeah, except your speech just said you weren't left behind. Also, the reason the schools weren't open before was because the teachers weren't vaccinated. Because they didn't want to die for you. They just wanted to be safe.
The clearest case I've seen for school choice in our lifetimes, because we know.
How would school choice have solved this? The parents weren't working, so they couldn't afford these schools anyway. Also, how would these schools still have their own teachers who they would need to employ? School choice is not the answer. School choice is never the answer. Private schools are not an answer. They're actually a detriment. We should just have a public school system, because then all the money would go into the public schools and everyone would get a better education.
Education is the closest thing to magic in America. Last year, under Republican leadership, we passed 5 bipartisan COVID packages. Congress supported our schools, our hospitals, saved our economy, and funded Operation Warp Speed, delivering vaccines in record time. All 5 bills got 90 votes in the Senate. Common sense found common ground.
No, there's a vast difference between what happened under the Trump administration and what happened under the Biden administration. The first bill you passed was the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of the world. The reason you got any Democrat support is because there was actually some help for Americans. And unlike the Republicans, they realized that, yes, they had to swallow some true garbage in those first couple bills because it was required to help the American people get a little crumb. And then when it was a larger chance and the roles were reversed, all the Republicans said, you don't deserve shit.
In February, Republicans told President Biden we wanted to keep working together to finish this fight. But Democrats wanted to go it alone.
No, you gave them a bullshit bad bill, and they passed a significantly better one.
Spent almost $2 trillion on a partisan bill that the White House
only because you chose to make it partisan.
Was the most liberal bill in American history.
It was also the largest rescue bill, and those tend to be liberal.
1% went to vaccinations, no requirement to reopen schools promptly. COVID brought Congress together 5 times. This administration pushed us apart.
No, look, I'm going to stop repeating this over and over. They chose not to help. Also, there's actually Republicans, and this was actually, I was watching Neil Cavuto a couple of days ago, where they're saying we have to take some of the unspent money from the COVID bills and reallocate it to some of these other things. And Neil Cavuto asked him the right question. Well, some of this money is unspent because the schools have earmarked it for the future. Are you saying we should take that money and then spend it somewhere else? And the guy said no. He said, okay, well, what money are you talking about? And he said that money. He said, and that was what keeps going on. You're not being genuine.
Another issue that should unite us is infrastructure. Republicans support everything you think of when you think of infrastructure. Roads, bridges, ports, airports, waterways, high-speed broadband. We're in for all of that.
No, you're not. The high-speed broadband this is the first time I've heard a Republican say high-speed broadband.
But again, Democrats want a partisan wish list. They won't even build bridges to build bridges. Less than 6%.
So the Republican response bill is pretty much the same amount as their COVID bill. It's about $600 billion. The Joe Biden bill is not expansive enough for infrastructure as it stands. So the Republican bill is way too small. So let's see what's passing. They haven't pushed through anything yet, but it's coming.
The president's plan goes to roads and bridges. It's a liberal wish list of big.
It's not an infrastructure plan, you idiot. It's a jobs plan.
Government waste, plus the biggest job-killing tax hikes in a generation. Experts say when all is said and done, it would lower wages of the average American worker and shrink our economy. Tonight, we also heard about a so-called family plan, even more taxing, even more spending, to put Washington even more in the middle of your life, from the cradle to college. The beauty of the American dream.
That's not what the American family plan was either. And also, I'm going to use this every time I'm stealing this from Joe. Who do you want to tax, and who do you want to give tax breaks to? Also, why are you fighting against education? You just said it was magic. Like 2 minutes ago, you said it was magic, and this would help fund education earlier and for longer.
Is that families get to define it for themselves. We should be expanding opportunities and options for all families, not throwing money at certain issues because Democrats think they know best. Infrastructure spending that shrinks our economy is not common sense. Weakening our southern borders and creating a crisis is not compassionate. The president is also abandoning principles he's held for decades. Now he says your tax dollars should fund abortions. He's laying groundwork to pack the Supreme Court.
Okay, no on the abortion thing. And look, I guess it depends on how you fund this. If you say, yes, Planned Parenthood does abortion and that's your tax dollars, yeah, I guess that's an argument. Also, the Supreme Court that you packed by stealing a seat, and then when something like 80 million Americans had voted, you decided to slam through a justice with 8 days left before the election after holding a seat up for a year. Oh, yeah, that's Supreme Court.
This is not common ground. Nowhere do we need common ground more desperately than in our discussions of race. I have experienced the pain of discrimination.
Now, keep in mind, he's about to say at some point during this, racism does not exist, or U.S. is not a racist country. But he's going to give you examples of racism prior to that happening.
I know what it feels like to be pulled over for no reason, to be followed around the store while I'm shopping. I remember every morning at the kitchen table, my grandfather would open the newspaper and read it, I thought. But later I realized he had never learned to read it. He just wanted to set the right example. I've also experienced a different kind of intolerance. I get called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives, by liberals. Just last week, a national newspaper suggested my family's poverty was actually privilege because a relative owned land generations before my time. Believe me, I know firsthand our healing is not finished. In 2015, after the shooting of Walter Scott, I wrote a bill to fund body cameras. Last year, after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, I built an even bigger police reform proposal, but my Democratic colleagues blocked it.
Why? Was it because it was a bad bill? Yeah, it was. And also, why aren't you telling us if you really do believe in these things, why aren't you telling us about what was in your bill? Because your constituents don't want it. They're the ones who are saying it's the victim's fault all the time. And I'm not saying it's always the police's fault either. But also, 46% of Republicans believe the Derek Chauvin trial was the wrong verdict. So this is what I mean. He's not going to give you any actual examples of policy. He's just going to give you platitudes.
I extended an olive branch. I offered amendments, but Democrats used a filibuster to block the debate from even happening. My friends across the aisle seem to want the issue more than they wanted a solution. But I'm
George
still
Floyd and policing bill has passed twice now, although he is, to his credit, he is now working on it. But in all likelihood, it's going to be a worse bill by his inclusion.
working. I'm hopeful that this will be different. When America comes together, we've made tremendous progress, but powerful forces want to pull us apart. 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture,
This is him misunderstanding what critical race theory is, and he is wrong.
people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all. By
Also
doubling
misunderstanding critical race theory and lying.
down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.
As I've given you plenty of examples of the racism that has directly happened to me. We are not racist. But come on, man.
It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
There's currently GOP lawmakers who are advocating that we should only teach the good in slavery, or that we shouldn't even teach it at all.
I'm an African American who has voted in the South my entire life. I take voting rights personally. Republicans support making it easier to vote and harder to cheat, and so do the voters. Big majorities of Americans support early voting, and big majorities support voter ID, including African Americans and Hispanics. Common sense.
Yes, look, it is common sense. If you misrepresent the issue, you already have a layer of identification for voter ID. And I've talked about this a lot. But what he's about to say is very disingenuous as well.
Common ground. But today, this conversation has collapsed. The state of Georgia passed a law that expands early voting, preserves no excuse mail-in voting, and despite what the president claimed, did not reduce election day hours. If you actually read this law,
Yeah, Stacey Abrams had a 6-minute thing going over everything wrong with this bill. And this is one of dozens, hundreds of bills that are trying to be passed.
it's mainstream. It will be easier to vote early in Georgia than in Democrat-run New York. But the left doesn't want you to know that. They want people virtue signaling by yelling about a law they haven't even read. Fact checkers have called out the White House for misstatements. The president absurdly
I thought fact checkers were wrong and illegal and should never be used.
claims that this is worse than Jim Crow. What is going on here? I'll tell you, a Washington power grab. This misplaced outrage is supposed to justify Democrats' new sweeping bill that would take over elections for all 50 states. It would send public funds to political campaigns you disagree with.
It would also send it to what you do disagree with. This is the HR 1. It would call for public financing of elections. The counter to that is private financing of elections, like Tim Scott, where you get all your donors to give you money, and that's who you represent, not the American people.
And make the bipartisan Federal Elections Commission partisan. This is not about civil rights or our racial past. It's about rigging elections in the future. And no, the same filibuster that President Obama and President Biden praised when they were senators, the same filibuster that the Democrats used to kill my police reform bill last year, has not suddenly become a racist relic.
That's right. It has always been a racist relic. If you go back and look into the history of the filibuster, pretty much prior to modern day politics, it was used almost exclusively to stop the expansion of civil rights acts, of civil rights. The people who used the filibuster did not want people like Tim Scott not only in their party, but they didn't want them to have rights. So yes, it has been a racist relic. We're now just coming to terms with it. Also, you're using it to obstruct the will of the American people.
Because the shoe is now on the other foot. Race is not a political weapon to settle every issue the way one side wants. It's far too important. This should be a joyful springtime for our nation. This administration inherited a tide that had already turned. The coronavirus is
kind of weird then that the first month or so that Joe Biden was in office, there was still like record high deaths. And then now it's like maybe 1,000 or so a week. We used to have 4,000 a day. The tide was not turning. The Trump administration was an abject failure when it came to COVID. They lucked out that scientists figured out how to do the vaccines fast enough. And not all the vaccines came from Operation Warp Speed. Pfizer did not. The Pfizer vaccine actually came from Obama because the mRNA research that they were doing was funded by him.
On the run. Thanks to Operation Warp Speed and the Trump administration, our country is flooded with safe and effective vaccines. Thanks to our bipartisan work last year, job openings are rebounding. So why do we feel so divided? Anxious. A nation
Because they canceled Mr. Potato Head.
with so much cause for hope should not feel so heavy laden. A president who promised to bring us together should not be pushing agendas that tear us apart. The American family deserves better, and we know what better looks like. Just before COVID, we had the most inclusive economy in my lifetime, the lowest unemployment rates ever.
Most Americans couldn't afford a $400 shock. That's part of why the economy crashed so quickly.
Recorded for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians, and a 70-year low nearly for women. Wages were growing faster at the bottom than at the top. The bottom 25% saw their wages go up faster than the top 25%. That happened because Republicans focused on expanding opportunity for all Americans.
By giving cash to the wealthy that didn't trickle down.
In addition to that, we passed opportunity zones, criminal justice reform, and permanent funding for historically black colleges and universities.
Opportunity zones are tax havens for the wealthy. The criminal justice reform, to be fair, is good. But what is the name of that, Tim? Oh, it's the First Step Act. What's the second step?
For the first time ever, we fought the drug epidemic, rebuilt our military, and cut taxes for working families and single moms like the one that raised me.
Nope, raise their taxes.
Our best future will not come from Washington schemes or socialist dreams. It will come from you, the American people, Black, Hispanic, white, and Asian, Republican and Democrat, brave police officers in Black neighborhoods. We are not adversaries. We are family. We are all in this together, and we get to live in the greatest country on earth. The country where my grandfather in his 94 years saw his family go from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. So I am more than hopeful. I am confident that our finest hour is yet to come. Original sin is never the end of the story, not in our souls and not for our nation. The real story is always redemption.
All right, we're gonna be done there because he's gonna do a hymn, and I don't really care about that. Look, there's a lot of it's platitudes. He's not giving you data and information on the things that he's saying because he's lying. We do have systemic racism. It is a thing. It's happened. He literally argued to it. He said it happened to him. The reason his police bill was stopped was because it wasn't a very good bill. We'll see what happens with the current bill. But no, bipartisanship does not mean Joe Biden is failing because you all refuse to help him on any level. That's not on Joe Biden. That's on you. The American people support what he's doing, and that's why he has higher approval ratings than Trump ever did. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.